Moved there. We go. All set? Okay. Oh, one question that I have, I'll edit this out, but one question I had is, do you prefer Renee Greene Murphy or do you, yeah, okay. All right. So today we have as our guest Renee Greene Murphy here to talk about her award-winning children's book about listening to your intuition called Your Heart's Voice. Renee is a mom, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a school counselor, and now an author of her first children's book, Your Heart's Voice. Renee was born and raised in New York. Renee worked as a school counselor for 10 years in New York City. She has her master's degree in counseling and school leadership. Since having children, Renee has been home helping raise her children, ages 4, 8, and 10. And books are an integral part of her family's day. Luckily, all 3 children have a strong love for books, which helped Renee develop the idea for writing this book. Renee has always used her intuition, starting from a young age to adulthood, to help guide her in making the right choices for her life, and wanted to write this book to help remind others to use theirs. Renee, I'm so glad to have you here. As we were talking before we started recording, I feel like a very conscious parent to my 3, who are almost exactly the same as your 3. And yet, when I was reading this information and looking at your book, it struck me, I don't think I've ever talked to them about intuition. How do I miss that? Like, is that something that you hear from people?
Absolutely. I hear it all the time. Thank you for having me. I just want to preface that. You're not alone. I intuitively felt the desire to write my book. It was as though my own intuition was whispering to me, it's time, it's something that needs to be written about because you are not alone. I hear from parents and caregivers and school officials all the time, and even children that either say, I wasn't aware of that. Wow. Or thank you for reminding me to use mine.
Oh, yeah, I bet. As a school counselor, I was going to ask, do you see that children, have you noticed a difference with children using their intuition more or less, or, not really being aware of it even until it's introduced?
Yeah. Now that my children have read my book and it's something that I use in my household, it's a book that I've read to my children's classmates in their classrooms. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
funny, my children say to me, now they use the language, Mommy, I'm using my heart's voice. My 4 year old, almost 5 year old, tells me, my heart's voice is telling me to do this, to make this choice. So it's definitely continual language in my household. And after I read it to my children's, in particular, second grade class, the children afterwards were asking me questions about it. And then when I had seen them weeks later, they mentioned, I'm using my heart's voice. Or if I ran into their parents, in the supermarket or at a game, they would say, we are always talking about using our intuition now. Thank you for that reminder. So, yes, I think that once children are aware of it, like anything, anything that they're learning, once they're aware of it and they feel comfortable, they acknowledge and they understand what it is, they're going to be more apt to using it. It's very important to make the cause and effect relationship. So I always explain how is it you feel after you use your intuition. It's always there to guide you to make the right choice, and whatever decision you have to make, whether it's I want to watch my TV show. It's on tonight, but it's past my bedtime. What do I do? After you make the right choice, which is go to bed, how do you feel the next day? Well, I felt great. I had more rest, and my heart's voice told me it was time to go to bed, and I felt more relaxed and calm. I mean, it can be used in any decision making skills, which throughout life is something that we're always having to make and always having to decipher. Obviously, as we get older, our decisions become more complex, but our intuition is always there to guide us, no matter who we are, what age, where we live in the world.
I love that. I was going to ask how you introduce it to like a 5-year-old, because your book says for ages 5 and up, and introducing it as your heart's voice. That is so beautiful. I can just imagine that my kids would resonate with that. So
Yeah. After
that's
I came up with and developed the idea in 2018, after my second child was born as a stay-at-home mom, I remember working out on the treadmill and looking over at my husband and saying, I need to do more. I've now been a stay-at-home mom for, at that point, 4 years. And while it is so daunting and draining and by no means easy, as a school counselor in the city for 10 years, I felt a void and I wanted to in some way be back into the educational field. And I had remembered I'd always wanted to write a book. It was then that I did my research and realized there were no children's books on intuition. I was flabbergasted because as a school counselor, I always used a child centered, child strengths based approach in counseling. And I think I was indirectly using um, an intuitive approach as well without using the word intuition. Fast
Mhm.
forward in 2018, when I did my research and saw there were no children's books on intuition, I knew that I needed to name it and word it in a way that was less complex. How do we connect this feeling slash voice that is teaching us the right thing to do without it being scary, the boogeyman, or even hallucinating in grandiose terms? And so that's
True.
why I came up with your heart's voice. I mean, you can call it your intuition, your gut, your instincts, your conscience. It's our God given gift that we all have. And unfortunately, it's suppressed. I think the older we get, the more chaos, the more stress that ensues. It's less likely, unless we use it, that we hear it. It's the same
That
reason why
was my
children are more
next
likely to hear
question.
spirit, right? And see spirit because
Yes.
they're not really aware of the chaos and the stress. And so that's why they say even animals do. So it's definitely a whisper. And like any tool, the more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. In thinking about it, I was thinking exactly what you said. I feel like a lot of times it's easier for me to listen to God, spirit, than listen to my own inner voice. I've had to do a lot of meditation practice every day for almost 3 years to get to a place where I can hear that voice because with all of the outside chaos and influences and now we're on our phones constantly. Like it's most people don't take the time to sit still and listen to that voice. We're always allowing everything else to influence us. And yeah, I feel like I've gotten away from it. So I know a lot of other people have gotten away from it. Even as an adult, do you have any tips for learning to recognize it and quiet everything else so that you can recognize it and move forward with that?
Absolutely. I like to say, find your calm. I think
Mm.
we need like a hat or a slogan, a shirt.
That should be your
Um,
next business.
Find your calm. For me, my calm is the beach. I know instinctually that I am meant to live near the beach, be by the beach. I am immediately calmer the second I walk onto the beach. Doesn't matter which beach. I could be in Miami. I can be uh, at the local beach where I live, which is the North Shore on Long Island. Doesn't matter. Immediately, the sound of the water and grounding myself at the beach, using all five senses, calms me down. It's where I finished writing my book on my phone, believe it or not. And it's why Jade is at the beach. Her
Uh,
name is Jade, which means the jewel of the heavens. There's a bunch of spiritual subliminal messages tied into my book because of the loss of my brother, which is dedicated to, and I integrated him into the book. But she is at the beach because that's my calm. And your calm could be yoga, it could be listening to music, it could be driving, it could be exercising, reading, coloring. I have Jade, one of the first lessons she learns in the story, which I tried to simplify, is she's coloring and drawing a picture for her uncle. That's her calm. And I mention that as one of the first life lessons. But my children, I try to have them be aware of what's their calm. One child likes to read, that's her calm. She finds a quiet nook in the house or outside under a tree. The other likes to color. My son, he likes to play with his toys. He likes to build. That's his calm. So as adults, we need to first find ourselves. It's so important to know what works for you in life. What works for you is going to be different than what works for me. Identify that and then use it. That's the first step to tapping into your intuition, is finding your calm.
I love that. I was just thinking as a mother, so often, we're focused on other people, our children, perhaps husband, and we tend to lose ourselves. I've talked to so many women to recently in the last couple weeks who said to me, I don't even know what I like or what kind of music I like. And so I love this concept because when you find that space, you're so right. The intuition just comes out. It's just speaking to you because you've released all the other things. And I love that. I
Absolutely.
love that idea with children.
And
Gosh, you're
not
full
only
of all sorts of great nuggets for conscious parenting.
and you break the cycle of having to rely on external factors to dictate you, your likes, or like you said, figuring out who we are. We develop who we are. It's an internal decision and it's an internal um, realization. We all have our own likes and dislikes, and our personality comes from within. And if you're not tapped into that emotional intelligence and intuitive awareness compass, it's easy to lose, but it's something that you should always rely on and strengthen throughout life. It's also what builds self esteem. It's why I think my book is so important, especially for children who are so lost in social media and following the crowd. I say this a lot to our youth. I presented to the Girl Scouts, but other podcasts and speaking events that I've done. I think it's so important that children tap into their inner compass so that they can boost morale for themselves. Independent thought boosts self esteem. That there's a direct linkage between high self esteem and high academic performance, just like there's a direct linkage between high emotional stability and intelligence and physical health. It's a win-win for everyone, really, when we use our intuition, because not only are we boosting self-esteem and tapping into our independent thought process, we are removing more of the stress from society and the chaos and external factors that we do not need to rely on. Children are just brainwashed, and so are adults, because
Mhm.
they think everything they see and read is true. And if someone else is doing it and it works for them, that's what I should be doing. That's the lovely thing about your intuition. It follows you throughout life. And that right there immediately lessens anxiety. It's that you don't need to pay for it, it's free. I don't need to go find it. I don't need to be somewhere to have it. I don't need to ask permission to use it, right? It's as
Mhm.
long as you find your calm and you develop a relationship and a trust with it after you see that it works. That right there is going to immediately lessen the anxiety, because it's going to put us on the right path. And you don't need to be anywhere in particular to use it. It comes from within, and so you yourself are in control.
It seems like, there's so many people today worried about how connected our kids are to their devices. And like you said, brainwashing, it becomes hard to know what is right and what is wrong. But if we're connected to our intuition, it tells us. I feel like this is like the key that everybody's been missing with that conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so
And it
beautiful.
sounds so simple at the same time, doesn't it? It's like, "Oh my gosh, like, how did I miss that?" Or, "Thank you for reminding me." And it is simple. It is. It's complex, yet it's simple at the same time. It goes underused because people forget about it. And
Mhm.
then once you're aware of it, something clicks and it's like, "Wow."
Yeah.
So when I get in the car and there's that voice that's like, "Put your seatbelt on," like, that's my intuition. When you are You think about our youth when they're posed with a peer pressure question, right? Like, um, hanging out with certain people that they shouldn't, and there's that voice that's saying, I just get this weird feeling when I'm around this person. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel right. That's your intuition. not to do it, right? Or study for that test. Sometimes our intuition, it's always guiding us to do the right thing, but sometimes it's the harder choice. Sometimes it's the choice that takes more
True.
effort. And for all of us, many people like the easy way out. And so they just either overlook it or they use the shortcut, which again, these are common things that just as humans, we just do innately. Our intuition is there to remind us that once we do use it more and we make good choices and we feel good, we're going to be on our divine path.
Yeah,
We're going to find, we're that much closer to our life's purpose. And that synchronicity of feeling good, that harmony of mind, body, soul connection is really where it's at.
that's incredible. I Yeah, I can relate. When you said it's so simple, we've made the world so complicated. The
Mm.
world has become so complicated, and the things that I found that work are the simple things that have always been there. We've maybe overlooked them, but they've always been there. I have a tendency to be very linear and logical, and sometimes my intuition is the opposite. It's here guided by your heart. And I sometimes struggle with that because oh, that doesn't make sense. That can't be right. And then I go the other direction, the direction that I think I should go. And it's never the right way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems easier or logical, but when we listen to our heart, things just tend to fall into place.
Yes, and that's the trial and error that we as people need to be more mindful of once we're aware of it. I tell my children all the time, we're always going to mess up, but when you're aware that when we use our intuition, it's giving us the right choice, um, how did that make you feel? It's very important to tap into the emotion. So often we forget situations and experiences, but we always remember how it made us feel. We might forget the specifics of who was there and how old we were, but we always remember the emotion behind it. So when you're able to connect, when I went to bed early and I listened to my intuition, and I studied for that test and I got the rest I needed and I put in that extra effort, even though I didn't want it. I wanted to watch my show. I wanted to stay up texting my friend. As an adult, I wanted to stay out a little longer, whatever it is. How did you feel when you made the right choice? That's what you're going to remember. And then
Mm,
that right there is going to strengthen your gift and your tool of intuition that much more. And then we're going to rely on it more because we all want to feel good.
yeah, that's so good. I was just having this conversation with my daughter. My oldest daughter does not like to do schoolwork. We homeschool, and she fights with me every single day about it. And I miss that's the piece I'm missing is how, I'm giving her like consequences. Like if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen later in life. What I'm missing is that emotion piece. How do you feel when know the answer when you go to our co-op later? That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's like think about it, going to the gym, getting up early, right? We're just like, hit snooze, I don't want to, late at night, whenever the class is. But you always feel good when you're done. You don't walk out
Always.
of it and say, oh, I'm never going to do that again. You're always like, oh, I feel better. And then when you're consistently going, right? Your body's getting into better shape, you feel better, you have more energy. So that what makes you go again. We always fall back on how we felt. Um, Tough situations and tough discussions, the same thing. It might be hard to have that conversation, but then do we feel better afterwards? Usually we do. So that's going to prompt us to want to have those discussions more. It really is just us getting into the mindset of when we feel better afterwards, we're not hurting anyone, right? We're not hurting ourselves or anyone else, then it's the right choice. I simplify it in my book where Jade is eating her vegetables. It's obviously not something that she wants to do, but she's telling her parents about her day in school and she gets distracted and she finished her dinner and she felt good afterwards. The first life lesson was cleaning up her toys. She got distracted because she was drawing an angel for her uncle. I added my brother into the story.
Ah,
And she was coloring to calm down. It's her calm. And then her mom said, I always told you to clean up toys when you are done leaving a room. She didn't listen to her heart's voice at that time. So she's wondering, I don't feel very good. I don't know what that is. She goes to bed at night thinking, what is that voice? She doesn't know what it is, but there's a voice telling her to do the right thing. And then by the end of it, she borrows her dad's pen. She doesn't ask. And her dad is not upset with her because she tells the truth, but he just tells her always return things back in their place. When you're borrowing things of others, always ask first. But she doesn't get in trouble because she was being honest. And then by the end of it, her uncle, my brother, is the one that teaches her your heart's voice after she draws an angel for him is your intuition. And it's there to guide us to make good choices for everyone, really. And so the book kind of does like a full circle in the end. That's my way of also
Oh,
adding him to the story. My brother had high self-esteem. He was extremely confident, not too much where he was, arrogant or unlikable. He was very likable, and people just kind of connected to him. It was like he was a walking golden magnet.
wow.
And I think it's because he was so happy. And there's also a direct linkage between high self esteem, high intuition, and being likable and getting along with others, right? When we feel good, we exude happiness. When you exude happiness, people want to be around you. It's the
Yeah.
same in the opposite. When you are walking around depressed and unhappy and angry, people don't want to be around you.
Yeah.
Robert was very, very well liked throughout my community where he worked and beyond. He had hundreds and hundreds of people at his wake, and the line was wrapped around funeral home for an hour and a half. People couldn't even get in. And he
Wow.
wasn't a cop or a firefighter, which is typically when you have a wake for a younger person because they come and respect everyone there. They knew him. And to this day, they still contact us. We're doing a memorial for him. He was a coach for a softball team for 11 years, and we do a yearly softball game where his team gets together and they play family and friends. And we just
Wow.
try to honor him as much as we can because everybody loves and misses him so much.
Wow. That's incredible. Was he, do you believe that he was super connected to his intuition?
Yeah,
And
I think without being as aware as one would be, he was so happy, never said a bad thing about anybody,
wow.
um, wasn't easily stressed, just like very content, very happy, very likable. And again, I think it's because he knew who he was, trusted his decision making skills, and listened to his intuition. Really, he just was a really happy guy, and he would love to be able to share this message with other children so that they can be their happiest and live their most fulfilled lives.
That's so nice. I'm sure he's doing that through you right
Yeah.
now. So you say that you always used your intuition throughout your life. Is it something that you guys talked about in your family?
We talked about more so your conscience. That was the word that was used. A lot of life decisions and right and wrong and values and morals and good ethics and being a good person and being honest. So I remember at a very young age developing my intuition and not knowing what it was. I remember hearing, do this, it's the right thing to do. Even at times when I didn't want to as a child, whether it was like playing basketball in the front yard and hearing like my mom say, come in, dinner, listening and not like staying out there because my intuition saying, your mom's calling you. It's go in. You can come out another time. Those those were the things that I remember tapping into at a very young age, probably 6, 7, 8, and then being more aware of it, like, oh, I felt good when I listened. I felt good. um, I was a very confident little girl. I'm pretty short, and so, you know not to say that short people aren't confident, but it's easy to not be, growing up being the shortest. But I always was very confident, always had a good head on my shoulders, always knew where I was meant to go. And I'm not saying my life was perfect by any means. I'm living the worst pain anyone could imagine, going through the loss of my little brother. So far from it. But I do believe that no matter how hard life gets, good or bad, your intuition is always going to be there, and it's important to rely on it, because it is there to make our lives a little easier.
You mentioned conscience. Is there a difference between intuition and conscience?
I don't think so. I think it's just another use of language for the same meaning. Some
Hmm.
people might feel more comfortable using your conscience,
Hmm.
your gut, your instincts. These are all, in my opinion, synonyms for your intuition.
Okay. In your social media, you mentioned that the benefits of nurturing your intuition also include enhanced creativity and improved problem solving. Can you explain that?
Yeah, we are all faced with having to make decisions on a regular basis. As I said earlier, those decisions become more complex as we get older. Children don't really tap in and understand and excel in problem solving skills at a young age if it's not something that is properly taught. I think my book not only does well in the home, but in the school system.
Mm.
And problem solving skills and decision making skills are vital to your emotional and mental well being. It's so important to be able to make good decisions and to be able to navigate problem solving. So, for a child in the classroom, at recess, or in the home, at camp, wherever they are, mom and dad are not going to always be with you to tell you the right thing to do. You need to be able to develop very good problem solving skills. Usually, it's to avoid the conflict and to have the alertness and the understanding of how to navigate it. But then sometimes we fall into it. And so, how do we navigate the conflict when we're in it? In the classroom, a lot of children don't have the opportunity, and the teachers, because of the time of the day, they are fitting so much in. I know you said you're homeschool, but in the public school system where my kids go to school, and I was in a charter school as well in the city, there's not a lot of time in the day to be able to deal with the conflict that ensues throughout the day in the classroom when you have 20, 21, 22, 25 kids in the class.
Yeah.
My book is a great reminder and tool for behavior and for conflict resolution. The child, the student can read my story, they can identify whatever decision they need to make, they write it down, and they can use the words in my book as vocabulary enhancement and reiterating important skills. At once they write down the decision they need to make, how they feel afterwards, and then they write those words down and they make that cause and effect, as I said earlier, that cause and effect relationship between when we make a decision, how it makes us feel, good or bad. I'm
Yes.
teasing Sally because she teased me back. Well, how do you feel after you did that? And what is your heart's voice telling you to do?
Mm.
Telling me, now they're going to write down, it's telling me to ignore her. It's telling me to remind myself that I have self control and that making others feel bad doesn't make me feel bad. It doesn't make me feel good. Once you're able to identify how decisions make us feel good or bad, we're able to then make the change. And so my book works great with a journal. Children are writing this down, and then the teacher can reevaluate the journal and at the end of the week and get a good snapshot of what's going on in the classroom without having to interrupt the school day. She gets a broad spectrum of what's going on, and without having, like I said, to interrupt the classroom and pull kids out for counseling. It also at the same time develops these skills for children to be independent thinkers and good problem solving abilities, which are skills that we need throughout life.
Oh, yeah. That's so good. If some of our listeners wanted to introduce this to their children's teachers or school, how would they do that?
Well, first, they can purchase my book. It is sold on major retailers like Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, Target, Walmart, or they can go to my website, reneegreenemurphy.com. There's an E at the end of green. And there are schools right now that are using my book as part of their social emotional curriculum. Teachers are using it in each individual classroom in the elementary and middle school setting. And more recently, I am developing the Your Heart's Voice journal, as I mentioned, so that it can alleviate some of the time off the teacher and the counselor and develop more independence with the student. Audible is also available on Amazon, so my book can be read by a professional actor and it sounds lovely. And there is paperback and hardcover.
Well, like I said, I would like to listen to your book in your voice. I love your voice.
Thank you.
But but navigating the schools I know can sometimes be difficult. Do they just buy the book and give it to the teacher and let them read it and see how they could maybe integrate it? And is that the best way? Like I said, I homeschool, so I don't know how to navigate the schools, but it
Anybody
can be difficult.
Anybody, your best bet is to probably reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram, author Renee Greene Murphy, and Facebook, and or go to my website, reneegreenemurphy.com. And you can email me and order my book that way. You can buy it in bulk. It'll get delivered right to your school, right to your home. And from there, we can have a conversation about how you can integrate it into your classroom. Obviously, it would change based on the grade level, but generally speaking, you can use my book as part of the health standards, literacy standards for ELA. There's many ways that my book can help across a broad spectrum in the school setting as well as in the home.
Perfect. I love that you can integrate just consciousness into, every aspect, including the school. I know that will impact so thousands and thousands of children and families across the country, Renee. You've
Thank you.
done really good work here. And I know your book has won numerous awards, so people recognize how needed this is and how valuable it is. And I highly commend you on what you've done. Before I let you go, I have two questions that I ask everybody. And the first one is, what is one book that you recommend our listeners read? And obviously your book is the top of that list. Is there another book that you recommend?
If it's a children's book, other than my book, Your Heart's Voice, The Giving Tree is a book that I always had in my counseling library, and it's in each one of my children's bookshelves as we speak. I
We love
highly recommend
that
it
too.
after my book. It has a lot of meaning behind it, and my 11-year-old still enjoys it. So it really doesn't matter how old you are. I always learn something else, and the meaning behind it is very, very, very profound, no matter how old you are.
Yes, I agree. I have a feeling some of my future guests are going to be recommending your book.
Oh, thank you. I
I'm
appreciate
so
that.
Finally, what is one thing that you wish the world knew?
It goes back to your intuition. I wish the world would, each individual person would use their own gift of intuition more. And I really believe it would help each and every person in the strongest way possible, in the most positive way, in the most profound way throughout their lives. I think we would all live in much more harmony um, if everyone relied on their own intuition to be able to develop that intuitive compass, and we would be happier, more at peace.
That's so beautiful, and I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing with us. And I, for one, am going to be ordering your book as soon as
Thank
we're
you.
done.
Thank you.
So
Thanks for
we'll
having me.
share, you shared, thank you for sharing how to get in touch with you. We'll share that on the podcast, wherever it's posted as well. And I look forward to just seeing my own children's lives impacted by this book.
Oh,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.